Unfamiliarity is one of the many facets that make a particularly historic place like the Queen Mary haunted. Which is to say, in my humble opinion, that I think haunted goes beyond just ghosts. It's also part of a historic structure's novelty, isn't it? And more than novelty, as a matter of fact. Educational, as well as inspirational. And the Queen Mary is the perfect example of something that we just don't see anymore. Positively, everything about her says not of this age. Says not how we do things anymore. For better and for worse, but in the ship's case I'd say mostly for better. And the Queen Mary being a ship is especially unique and special. She is a perfect anomaly. How many ships, once they outlive their use, become a stagnant, floating attraction? Stagnant in the literal sense. She is anything but stagnant. I vividly recall when I was 8 years old, my first glimpse of the ship ever. She resembled to me this big animated toy. That's the best way I can describe what she looked like. This humongous toy, like a Disney cartoon come to life. Now with that yesteryear irreplaceable charm comes a little bit of mystérieusement. And being a ship by itself just adds to that sense of mystérieusement. She's humongous even by today's standards of just how big we can make a ship. Made of hard steel, with all these long winding corridors. When you gaze upon the beautifully crafted structure, you may picture her late at night in the middle of the North Atlantic with fog all around her. You can't see hardly anything. Okay, so with that historic yesteryear charm, with the fact that she's a ship included on that, we get into the realm of death. The ship has had 55 reported deaths on board throughout her career as an ocean-going vessel.
All our allies and well-wishers in Europe, to our American friends and helpers, drawing ever closer in their might across the ocean. This is the message. Lift up your hearts. All will come right out of the depths of sorrow and of sacrifice.
On October 2nd of 1942, the HMS Curacao was escorting the Queen Mary on one of her troop duties when she was known as the Grey Ghost on a very cold, foggy winter morning toward New York off the coast of Ireland. If I'm not mistaken, there was a lot of miscalculations and the Curacao wound up being cut straight into by the Queen Mary's prow. And you can see the damage it caused to the Queen Mary. You cannot necessarily see the 239 deaths that were reported from the Curacao. And I think some of the crew down by the Queen Mary's bow in the engine room might have died as well. In December of that same exact year, carrying over 16,000 troops on board, the ship is filled to the max, and she gets hit on the starboard side where we are now by a 92-foot wall of a rogue wave, or 52 meters, I believe. The ship lists jolts, if you will, 52 degrees to the port side, and there were a lot of deaths on board. It is also estimated that about 7 troops a day died deep in the bowels of the Queen Mary because of a lack of proper air ventilation. Throughout World War II, an unspecified number of Nazi prisoners were known to commit suicide in this part of the ship. At one point in 1952, a young 7-year-old girl named Sarah drowned in the first-class pool right behind me, while some other time during the ship's peacetime career, a young girl named Jacqueline died in the tourist class pool. Okay, I think Dark Harbor has started because I hear like the sound of a bunch of souls in tortured agony on loop. So I don't know if that'll pick up on my new lav mic. So anyway, so I don't know all the details, but I heard that one death occurred right here on a peacetime voyage while the ship was on her way out of New York on like the same day. The poor man was walking upstairs, like toward the top on this side, the starboard side. The poor man, something jolted with the ship. She was known to roll, and he just fell all the way down on his back. Instant death. This death is a very well-known one. In 1966, a crew member got crushed by the gears in watertight door number 13 in the stern section of the engine room, which is currently being used for a haunted ghost maze. And so this ship has actual, tangible, crazy historic significance when it comes to death on board. But here we go into the realm of death itself. And the more the people of the past become subject to a history book you have to seek, and even if the things of the past remain well maintained and preserved properly, you're still gonna get a certain spook factor. In other words, people die. I mean, how many 4K colorized 1901 home movies have I seen where comments say something along the lines of, wow, to think all these people are dead now. So this beautiful piece of history, however interactive it remains, depending on if it's a museum or, like the Queen Mary, a combined museum where the original spaces are still used kind of to the capacity they used to be, become just naturally associated with death. I mean, if you go to a historic place like the Queen Mary, you're trying to live history, relive history in some way, get a glimpse of what it once was like. And it's with that said that I think we should move on to the exploitation. Now, the Stanley Hotel and the Queen Mary both have a little bit in common. They both have had tragic things happen there. So the haunted factor in that sense is a given already. But then comes media portrayal.
So don't be fooled. One trip aboard the Queen Mary, and you might be convinced that it could be one of America's most haunted hotels.
It's funny how a hot topic critique of the past can turn something haunted as well. And no better example is the Second Empire mansard roof that were built in like the second half of the 1800s, and by the 1920s became old and ugly looking to a lot of people of the time, to be specific. And then popular media of the time, like the cartoonist who created the Addams Family series, like Hitchcock with Psycho,
is, if I may say so, a little more sinister looking, less innocent than the motel itself.
Turned this otherwise old school, French origined home and style into something scary and creepy. And of course these big, now largely unpopulated mansions from a different time where servants were a thing, and so no wonder they had to be so big, became the subject of a haunting as well. So the Queen Mary came out at a very interesting time in history. She was already antiquated in a sense. Cunard has always been sentimental. The shipbuilder's description of the Aquitania in 1914 talks about how sentimental the interior decor is to the 1840s, if I'm not mistaken, which adds to the happy haunt aspect of it all. When the Queen Mary opened up as a tourist attraction in 1971, people's thinking was not about how ghosts might be roaming around. Now, what they wanted was a vicarious experience that they could not otherwise have on this otherwise exclusive ship built for celebrities and people of great high status. They were kind of living out a dream they otherwise couldn't have if the ship got scrapped. Just look at this panorama photo of the third-class dining room down on C/R deck, taken in, I believe, 1979, and how pristine it still looks. But then Disney took hold of it, and somewhere between 1987 and 1989, they decided that they wanted a haunted mansion at sea. 1995 rolls around, and Dark Harbor, then known as Shipwreck, starts the legacy of a scary haunted ghost ship as well. And then when Shipwreck became Dark Harbor in, I believe, 2013, a lot of these real tragic stories on board became arguably exploited for the sake of entertainment. Now, in my last video about Haunted Queen Mary, going over history and controversy over Dark Harbor, I spoke about how horror doesn't necessarily mean slasher like I used to think it was in my youth. At its core, it's about the dark and mysterious recesses of the human condition, just what we're capable of, how evil can prevail, and what that looks like. And it's highlighted in different ways. The Queen Mary is the paranormal version of that. And whatever your view is of Dark Harbor, whether it does in fact exploit the people who tragically died on board, or if it pays them tribute in a certain way, it can definitely be said that it's influenced the view of the ship. And as it were, we can't ignore how the neglect of the ship over the years has also contributed to the idea that the ship is haunted. Now, this video is not meant to condemn Dark Harbor. It's not to condemn all the ghost stories. It's simply an exploration of our definition of haunted. And it's with that expansion of the definition of the word haunted that I will give my, I don't think, so terribly hot take on the opinion. Yes, the ship is haunted. In what ways it haunted? I guess that's up for you to decide. I actually just thought of another point that I wanted to bring up. Based on someone's perception of the ship, they can get spooked easily. Like, I'm here, I know what this space was, and so I don't really feel or sense anything. But when someone is thinking, ooh, haunted, then they're easily jump scared. And I was just helping a few people out who were jumping all over, walking here and there, and finding cabin B340. And I just thought that that was an interesting moment for me to reflect on that aspect of perception. It is also with that said that I want to share my experiences, my haunted ghost experiences. Can they be explained, or is there something beyond it? I suppose that's up for all of us to decide. Okay. Ugh, cold coffee is not good. Moving on. Okay, for the life of me, I cannot find it. This incident happened a super long time ago, and I was very young. And I wouldn't be surprised if they closed this little staircase off. I know it was near the first class dining room, and so I think it was the one pictured here, potentially. Absolutely pains me that I can't be in the exact location because it would have had an exact impact. But this one is definitely the most potent and the craziest, in my opinion, of them all. So Dad and I are traversing down the stateroom corridor, and there's this staircase, and I decide to walk up it, and being the cute little sophomoric child that I was, I decided to act like I was super rich. Cringe alert coming up. Look at me, I'm so rich, I say, as I'm slowly walking down the stairs. And I mean right at that exact moment, this huge, and I mean huge, potent, speaking of potent, whiff of this strong smelling Chanel 5 potentially style perfume just engulfs me. And it keeps going, by the way. It doesn't stop. And it's like a big cloud's worth, to the point where Dad started smelling it from however many feet or meters below. This one still just gets me to this day, because the timing of it all was just so too good to be true. Now, the most logical explanation to this is that it came from an air vent, and it wasn't cleaning product. I can say that for certain, okay? But it might not have been perfume. It could have been something from an event that was going on in the third class dining room. There's a huge possibility that that's what it could have been. It's just what gets me about it is the timing of it. It happened immediately. Okay, so this one's definitely the most far-fetched, so do bear with me. And it also happened in the early 2000s, like most of these experiences have. So Dad and I are down here, and we get into this really wonderful conversation with these two incredibly well-dressed people. And I mean, they're dressed up to the absolute nines. The man has a monocle, for crying out loud. And there's nothing unique about the woman's hair. And I say that significantly because historically, they weren't straight like they tend to be now. People's hairstyles, women's hairstyles, were very tall, and I'll show you pictures, okay? It was straight and probably blonde, and it looked very modern, right? And so we're having a wonderful conversation with them. We talk about a variety of things, and they're so swish, they're so posh, okay, but friendly. That's important to note also. And so, for whatever reason, the minute we say goodbye, oh yes, see you later, and they're walking, these doors are important, they're walking in, and I mean the second they disappear, for some reason I'm like, oh, let's go look for them. I don't know why I said that, but there was something about them, and sure enough, Dad and I are fast walkers. I'm a fast walker, Dad was a fast walker, and we were like charging to find them. If we ran into them, we'd probably say, oh, hi. We were just exploring the area like you are. And we couldn't find them. There was no trace of them whatsoever. And I'm telling you, where they could have disappeared to, I have no idea. I have no idea. Here's what the former, I believe this is the former third class garden lounge. Again, super far-fetched. They could have just walked fast. My perception of how quickly we went inside to go and see if they were real people or not, it could be off. There's a chance, right? But it's worth noting all the same. Now, the last experience I'm going to share for this video happened right here on the B-deck third class staircase landing. It happened back in October of 2023 when I was filming the notorious Shane Dawson video. It was late at night. There was a party literally bumping in the original first class dining room. I got ripped off on eBay purchasing these vintage wingtip shoes that slid so badly and were really musty and moldy, and I'm never gonna wear them again. And I describe all that not just to rant a little bit, but also to explain where I was at that night. And I'll admit, I was feeling something around this area, but obviously I didn't jump to conclusions. Now, the slippery shoes play a big part in this experience. I really wanted to peer into the recently reopened mid-portion of the original third class dining room, and so I'm walking down the stairs. I have footage of this, and it was my first time really slipping on the stairs on my way down, and a good thing that I caught myself because it could have been pretty bad, to be perfectly honest. And what do I find but a seance room? And from a Christian perspective, seance is calling on demons, so make of that what you will. I even say in the video that I made as I was like going down the stairs, well, it's no wonder I felt something one deck above. This is a seance room. That it's no wonder this area feels the way it does. But that's the last like big, real, true experience that I've had on board the ship. Have you had any experiences on board? I feel like I've been on board so many times. I know the history of the ship so very well. Like, I feel like a lot of people who are watching this video do. So the sensibility and the understanding is a little different than someone who is just lost in the caverns of this beautifully wood veneered interior. But I mean, as someone who has that perspective and knows about the exploitation, I've still had interesting experiences. Subscribe, hit the bell notification. I hope you had a good time.